Hello everybody and welcome to today's live stream. I just want to do a quick check and make sure that you can all hear and see us. If you can hear me and see me, please just drop a quick comment in the YouTube chat so that I know that you are getting my audio and my video loud and clear. Let's have a look. Oh, it is a busy chat today. We've got David here, we've got Elaine here, we've got Stephen, Ty, Wendy. Welcome everybody to today's live Q&A with Damonza. Okay, so what I would like to start with first is we do have a poll up and running on the screen today. We are going to be using the Slido app. It's just a little bit more manageable than the YouTube chat. So what you can do to join in on the questions and the polls is just to hop over into the pinned link in the YouTube chat, or you can use the code or the QR code that is currently on screen right now to jump in. And at the moment, the current poll is, do you know if you have generative AI elements in your book covers? And so far, the answers have been 100% no. All right, so while this is going, I am going to kick things off today. My name is Deborah. If you don't know me, I am a self-published author. I have 3 books out and 1 more on the way that I am struggling to finish at the moment. And I'm so excited to have with me today my cover designer, Damon Freeman. Welcome to the channel, Damon. Thank you so much for being here. Can I get you to start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself and the business that you have built up at Damonza?
So very much for having me. It's thanks for the opportunity. I've never done anything like this before, so I'm looking forward to it. I'm a little bit nervous, but just freelancing, doing book cover design in 2011. Before that, I was just a normal graphic designer. I actually had a graphic design company, but it was just standard.
Oh my goodness, that's a lot. Wow. Yep. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. We are all going to be super nice to Damon today, because what I'm really hoping that we're going to get out of today's particular session is I want to make sure that we're focusing on the practical considerations, because there's been a lot of chat about generative AI. It's been a very emotionally charged time for everybody. And so I've put up on the screen here the 4 things that I'm hoping everybody can take away from today's session. And you'll notice that these are all really practical things that we need to think about when it comes to actually getting our book covers done. And just like in terms of a little bit of context of what's been happening in the generative AI space and book covers, we've been seeing a lot of headlines being made with generative AI covers. And this has been hitting everybody from traditionally published titles like the 3 that I've got on the screen here. We've got AI stuff happening in the short fiction space with Clark's World, and the most recent example that I can think of actually happened in the self-published fantasy space, which I am part of. And so the reason why I asked everybody this question as our opening poll was because myself and 299 other authors had to answer this exact question when we entered into a book contest this year. And as part of that particular book contest, there is also a cover contest. And in order for your book to qualify for the cover contest, you had to effectively do a certification in the form of this question to say, no, my cover does not have any AI elements. And so what I can currently see is that the results here in the audience poll is very interesting. We've got about 2/3 saying that no, there's definitely no AI in my cover. We've got 1/3 saying don't know. And what the actual spread of answers was in the actual competition was we had, I think, 91.8% of authors submitting for this contest answer no to this particular question. So I answered no based on just the timing of when my cover was finalized. And we had another author, Matthew Prindle, who also answered no to this question. And he answered no based on what he believed his cover designer had told him. And specifically, he was told, no, there is no AI in this cover. And this particular cover, as you can see, is a pretty strong cover, and it actually went on to win the entire cover contest. At which point, we started hearing allegations that this particular cover had a lot of generative AI elements. When that happened, the contest organizer and the author and the cover designer were asked to provide proof, as it were. And when people started going through the proof that was provided, they found evidence that the cover had indeed been using generative AI elements, and ultimately the cover was disqualified from the contest. And there were some pretty bad consequences for the author involved. Number one was obviously the reputational damage associated with it. There were accusations he was getting that the book itself, because it had an AI generated cover on it, was also AI generated. He had to commission a brand new cover and replace it and redo all of the paperbacks and the ebooks and everything. And other authors as well have been hit by this particular controversy. Some of them who weren't as fortunate to be able to commission new covers actually had to unpublish their books. And so that was a pretty shocking moment for all of us in the self-published fantasy community. And so, and especially the case because we found out that the cover designer had actually fabricated evidence when asked for it and had effectively lied to the author. And so I was really curious, Damon, are you and your team seeing similar situations like this across your client base and the wider market?
No, not really. So as cover designers, it's not, for us, it's not, generative AI is not a big deal, right? It's just another image source. So just like Shutterstock or Adobe Stock or iStock or Getty or Archangel, Midjourney, which is what we use, is just another source. You know, so we're designing thousands of covers a year. We get books that are very similar to each other, and authors often want the same things on their covers, right? So perhaps it's a silhouette of a person in a particular environment and they're holding a sword or whatever it might be. But each one of those covers, from our point of view, and obviously from their point of view, needs to be unique, right? So we're always looking for new legal image sources, right? So stock libraries or whatever it might be. Cover design as an art is different to many other kinds of art. And certainly the way we do it, because we're only using existing images, right? Whether they're generative AI or stock images, they exist. We're not illustrating covers. There are other cover designers that obviously do illustrated covers, but that's not what we do, and that's not what most cover designers do. So we're combining images in interesting ways to design a unique cover that sells the book. We're not creating it from scratch, and we're not creating art as its own. The book is the product. Cover is just the packaging, right? And maybe a marketing tool. So it's a bit different with us. And it's really business as usual. Interestingly, today, actually, I received an email this morning. It was interesting, from Shutterstock, that they are one of the image providers for Amazon,
yes.
that Amazon uses.
Yes.
All of the and the email that I got today said that you can use Amazon publishing and Shutterstock. You can use generative AI using the stock's generative AI tool on the cover.
So this is the default cover template tool that Amazon provides if you use their cover creator. Is that correct?
No. So
that's KDP.
That's KDP, right? I'm talking about the Amazon imprints.
I see. The ones like, that they run in-house and go out and sign authors to. Yep. Yeah. Oh, that is fascinating. That is really, really fascinating, because what I've seen happen in the self-published fantasy space, especially, is that the discourse has become very divided around AI covers. And I don't know if this is unique to the fantasy niche or genre, because so many fantasy book covers are, original illustrations, and there is a high proportion of covers which are illustrations as opposed to photo manipulated covers. But I'm starting to see a lot of these questions emerging in terms of, what is your stance on the use of AI? How do you use AI in your business? And if you're opting out of using AI, can you actually give an AI-free guarantee on your books? And these are questions that are being asked of, not just the big 5 publishers, who, for the most part, when they've had this kind of backlash from, a proportion of their readership, have just kind of gone, well, it is what it is, and production constraints, and we're just, moving ahead with a cover. None of the big publishing houses that I know of have actually pulled the covers with AI generative elements, but it's been very different in the self-pub space, where I think so far the rule has been every single time a self-published fantasy author has been informed that their cover contains generative AI elements, when they thought otherwise, they've actually pulled the cover and gotten a new one. And so I think it is very interesting to see what the different organizations are sort of coming out with in terms of their public stances on AI. Since May of 2023, Clarkesworld has come out with one. The Sci-Fi Fantasy Fiction, Writers Association has come out with one. Damonza, of course, has come out with one, which is how we sort of prompted this whole session today. I've come up with one as well, and I think this is going to be really interesting, because you and I actually disagree. I have landed in the position where I am actually going to be opting out of using any generative AI in my business, just for the reasons that I outlined in my position statement. But the thing I want to remind everybody in the chat is we're not going to be debating how we got to our positions today. If you're interested in what the positions are and how we got there, the links to those are going to be in the description of this particular video. Damon, what is the best way for people to engage with you if they do have concerns about the position that you're taking, and questions about it besides today's particular Q&A session?
Well, firstly, so we did get a little bit, that previous example that you mentioned of that fantasy sci-fi cover. We only had 2 authors reach out to us and ask us if there was any generative AI elements in their covers that we designed for them. One of them was a no, the other one was a yes. And we offered to adjust that cover. That was a yes, so there were no generative AI elements, and fine, because it was just a statement. Other than that, there's been no mention of anything. So what's interesting is that sort of triggered the changes to the order form, because our term conditions already included the possibility of generative AI being used in the designs, but clearly no one was reading it, because otherwise, why did they ask the question, right? Why did they ask the question of generative AI? That could there have been? So we have had it in our terms and conditions for quite a while, but I decided to add that opt-out checkbox, and I made it an opt-out checkbox instead of an opt-in checkbox, because I believe it substantially enhances the potential designs that we could do and the effects of the cover. But then I sent out an email, right? So I've made this change to the form. I sent out an email explaining why we did that and started putting together those separate articles. But very interestingly, since then, well over 90% of the orders we've received, and there hasn't been a drop yet. So 90%. It's a very, very small number of people that are choosing to opt out. And some of the more prolific authors, let's say those with 20 or more books, some of the big best-selling authors, they've emailed back saying, good for you, they agree, it's the right way to go. So that's the first thing. For people that want to engage with us, I'd say, look, firstly, just read all four. There were 4 articles, 4 blog posts, starting with the one, I think it's called What Now? The Legal and Ethical Use of Cover Design. So that was the original post that I sent with the email, but each one just leads to the next, right? So just read the first one. You can send the link, that's fine. So just to be clear on kind of how, as you've mentioned, on how I got to the point of view that I've got, I also recommend listening to or watching or reading the transcripts of Joanna Penn's podcast about this. I don't know if you know Joanna Penn. There's an excellent article which really I got a lot of thought clarifiers on by James from goonright.com. Really good article on how it all works, and that helped me a lot to figure out my own opinions. And I'm happy to discuss all of it, but be open to other points of view. And just email me if you'd like to email me, and I'm happy to discuss it. Or these kinds of things like this.
Excellent. And as for myself, if anybody has questions for what my position on AI is, I've done a number of videos on the use of AI on this very channel, so I'm always happy to engage in the comment section. Or if you'd like to debate a little bit further, not through the YouTube interface, you can always join the Paper Tiger Discord, which there's a link on the screen right now at the bottom. So with that said, I do want to start by saying how much I appreciate that Damonza has a very clear position, and that you've also considered alternatives for authors who are taking a different position from you, and the fact that you're here and willing to answer our questions, because we have so many questions about how all of this is going to work going forward. So how long, to begin with, have you been experimenting with generative AI? And has it only been Midjourney, or have you been playing around with other technologies as well?
So earlier this year, 2 designers actually started using Midjourney to create some elements for covers. I think it started, I guess, towards the end of last year, where one of the designers, found, well, I guess it was like we're on Shutterstock all the time, right? So obviously all the time with images, and she actually discovered, I mean, they were just really great images, right? So when she figured out, I don't know how she figured out, but she was the one that introduced me to Midjourney, saying this is how these amazing images are being created, right? With this website.
about that period when these to be experiment with humans it was to enter to the WEV that the goods are made covered done generally the same known as the case. Generally, like the two quiz equal those covers, you choose to true that author to opt out. The two of the generative AI in with national arrangements or any sort of the authors go back and opt out of those if yeah. Like I said, you will just think the story after that. You've taken the prequel, say, the authors opt out, and come across one of the reasons that play. The current, process feels that you try to play around to authors who are of generative AI won't have, will minimize the chance that generative AI will end up in their covers as much as possible, given that we know that, Photoshop is building that functionality into their software, and so is Canva, and pretty much every single other place. Mm. Yep.
And it's a stock photo to them. To everyone else,
Yep.
it's a stock photo. To us, it's a stock photo. To author, it's a stock photo. And
Oh, okay. So it's not been a wide rollout yet.
Yeah, it doesn't allow for commercial use of those images for now. That'll change very, very soon. And interestingly, I don't know if you're aware, maybe you are, you probably are, but the Adobe has released a statement that they will cover the costs of any copyright legal challenges to their generative
interesting.
AI
No, I didn't know about
images.
that.
So I mean, that's how confident. For right now, we don't use the generative AI elements of Photoshop. They exist, and we're trying them out and learning about them, but we can't use them. They're not able to be used commercially. So all that it means if somebody opts out is that we will not use generative AI, or we will not use AI to generate images for those covers, which is easy because that's the way we were doing it before. It's not a big change for us.
Oh, that's interesting.
But we can't guarantee it if we're using stock photos that they weren't generated with AI. Look, some stock libraries, I guess probably most of them now, will have a separate generative AI section, right? So we're not going to go into that section and get images for somebody that opts out of using generative AI. However, quite an interesting thing that happened last week or the week before was that somebody did tick that box that said they don't want to use AI images, and then sent us an image that they did want to use on that cover. That image that they sent was an AI generated image that had been uploaded.
Oh, that's the worst.
So
it is everywhere.
It's everywhere.
It's absolutely
right?
everywhere.
It's everywhere. There's no way around it. We just replied saying, look, this is a generative AI image. We're not going to use it. We'll use a different image, which is a stock photo that we know is not a generative, AI generated, or that
to the best of your ability. And that actually segues really nicely into another question I had, which was, if we go back to this earlier example in the self-published fantasy space, the only way that it kind of even came out that this cover was AI generated was because it drew a lot of publicity as a winner of a cover contest, and basically artists from all over Twitter looked at the proof that was provided, and the kind of proof that was provided was, the layered PSD file. The artist had done some sketches, and for a layperson who has not had any training in art or graphic design, it looks quite convincing. It only is the case when you've got kind of that a little bit of experience in that field, that you would look at this and go, wait, hang on, something is not right. And just to give an idea of what a photo manipulated cover looks like when it has been done without generative AI images. This is the layered PSD file that Damonza sent me for my excellent cover, and you can just see the amount of work that goes into doing one of these covers. There are so many layers in there, so many assets that you've pulled from Shutterstock and things like that, that it's gotten to the point where I feel like you need to, there's no hope that I have as an author of being able to tell whether or not something is AI generated or not. Certainly, I looked at a number of book covers in that particular cover contest, and I had thought a few were generated AI, and I was completely off. I could have flipped a coin, and the coin would have done better than I did in guessing what was AI generated and what was not. But for segments of the community, and certainly some authors' businesses, there's quite a bit of professional and reputational risk associated in having a generated AI cover on your books, and the fallout from that. And so I'm just wondering, Damon, what kind of proof do you think it would be reasonable for authors and publishers to expect from a cover designer? Because the kind of thing that we've seen being demanded from readers, it's gotten to the point where I sort of think like, maybe I need to be asking you guys for a time-lapse video of you putting the cover together so I can be like, here guys, definitely no AI, this is where everything came from. And I'm sure in the future, authors will be asked to do the same for their writing. Like, prove that you didn't type some prompts into ChatGPT to spit out this novel. Like, prove you were actually the one who wrote it. What are your thoughts on that? Mm. 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 Yeah, absolutely. I think the way the cover for Bob the Wizard actually got busted was somebody had dug into I think I'm going to get the term wrong, but the within Photoshop and found the Mid-Journey procedurally file name, and they'd gone as a user of Mid-Journey, aha, this is how I know, this is the prompt, this is the hash, and that's how they kind of tracked it down. But obviously, that information's out there now, so any bad actors out there will now know not to do that. The other interesting thing I think has been that authors are now being asked to, certify to some extent that their code doesn't include any generative AI. Have you given any thought to, certification from cover designers, or maybe something like, if an author went to you and said, "Hey, I've got this cover, I need to enter it in to a cover art contest," like what sort of certification would you be comfortable providing as a designer? Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm, mm, yeah. Mm, mm, yeah, yeah. Mm, mhm, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm,
books, right? So I'm not buying those books. Looking at those covers, I'm learning from that knowledge to design a cover, but I'm not buying those books. I'm not paying for those books. The ones that I'm paying for, I'm not interested in how the cover is made,
mm,
value in it. If
mhm.
it
I think
did
that's so
have value,
fascinating. Yeah.
if it was worth something in the sense that,
Mm-hmm.
if it had value in the sense that if
Mm-hmm.
a book could be guaranteed to have no AI
Mm,
elements, and therefore that value meant that a designer
mm-hmm.
could charge more for it, or the author could charge more, whatever it might be. If it had value, then you get so many people trying to cheat the
Mm,
system, right? In order to
mm,
not put in the work, but then still get
absolutely.
the
Yeah.
value from that.
Mm,
Yeah. That created a whole separate industry of fakes, of people trying to cheat the system. And because of the way generative AI works, a lot of those would get through, which would then mean that the certification just becomes
yeah.
meaningless, right? Because
Yeah.
it can be
Yeah.
faked anyway. So I just
That's
think
sort
it
of
would
my
be
biggest headache right now,
viable.
because I'm seeing a lot of authors and readers come out with very strong positions where they're like, if there is any sort of whiff of AI about it, I will not read it, I will not be involved with it, etc. And so I think it's been really helpful to hear from, what you're seeing from your perspective, in that, those those voices may not be representative of the majority of readers out there. And certainly that's sort of I think a function of what social media does. You know, it amplifies the loudest voices, and sometimes there is a silent majority out there. One thing that I think is really interesting to talk about is that you've actually changed your pricing structure in terms of the different packages that you are offering for cover design. So the top three that I've got along the screen here with the premium, standard, and budget, I think that's all pretty much consistent as with the past. But one thing I did notice, because I personally started out with a pre-made cover, is the pre-mades are no longer there. And we now also have a new offering of a text-only front cover package. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that change in service offering?
Sure. So, firstly, the pre-made covers, I took them away not for any reason other than when we were putting together the new site, really find a way to put those in that would fit in kind of with the site layout. And also, it was a relatively small part of our business. So we maybe did 3 or 4 of those a month, right? The pre-made covers. So it was a bit of a hassle having them up. Not having them up, it was fine. You just left them. But it was a bit of a hassle when somebody ordered one and then we had to take down, and then the numbering system was a bit unclear. You weren't sure if the number was referring to the one above it or the one below it. We just never got around to fixing it, and the amount of pre-made covers we were selling. Our pre-made covers were not cheap, right? So I kind of just thought it's not really worth it. So that's why we removed the pre-made covers. Figure out a way to make it easier to work with. We might bring them back, right? Or a variation thereof. With regard to the text-only front cover package, so that 100% came about because it is possible that that we will be replaced by AI cover designers, right? However, that generative AI is not able to put text on the cover, right, in a way that makes sense or works. You know, I don't know if you've ever tried to use generative AI for text.
It doesn't go well.
It comes out, it looks great, right? It looks great. The design is great, but it's just nonsense text that comes out. So I mean, for us, it is possible that all of our other packages might just die. Right? We get replaced by generative AI. But for now, the text-only front cover package will keep us alive.
See. Yeah, I see.
Right? So if somebody else generates an image or provides, an image from an artist or an illustrator, wherever it might be, then we can add the text. And adding the text is a major part of cover design. I have seen many covers in the past and now with wonderful images, right? Great images, and then terrible text.
Yes, I think I've seen some of those too.
And when I get a lot of cover designers that apply to work for us, and I see that all the time, right? Somebody is a great graphic designer, they can put together great images, but then they don't know how to integrate the text in the cover. And it just ruins the cover, right? You've got a separate image to the text, doesn't work, it's not integrated. So I see that all the time. So I know that is a strong point of ours in the way we include text on a cover, and that's why
And I'm really curious because certainly just based on this particular discussion and where I think things are trending for my target audience, I think the text-only front cover packages is probably where I'll be moving in the future. But one thing that really holds me back as an author is I have never commissioned original art before. And from the discussion we've just had about how, you can't guarantee it's AI free unless you literally got a human drawing it, with pen and paper or in a digital art software. Does this cover package with doing the text only, does that include maybe working with the artist or the photographer? Because I imagine that the way you lay out the different elements on a cover is affected by the composition of the image itself. And I just wonder, if I try to commission art on my own from an artist, like, would I make some sort of error in either picking an artist who's never designed anything for a book cover before, or just giving them a brief which is totally unsuited in terms of being on a book cover? Might be a great piece of art, might not be a great art for a book cover.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I would recommend working with somebody who has worked on illustrations for book covers, otherwise, or you've got to tell them, look, it's got to be the main, writing a full wrap for your book, then the main interesting visual part has to be on the right side. You can't have it in the middle of that wonderful wrap, and you have to allow space, a lot of space, for the text. But if somebody's already made creative illustrations for book covers, should know all of that already. I mean, we get those kinds of things now, and what we've received so far, I don't know where the authors are having their cover illustrated, but so far they've all been fine. They've all, out. Sometimes we've had to as well, where somebody's actually just bought an image from Shutterstock and just said, this is the image they want, put on the cover. And we've just, it's generally those have been pretty straightforward, non-fiction. They've been non-fiction covers, and it's been easy enough to work with. Look, we haven't had a problem with
that's excellent to know. I do want to flip back to the poll, which I found very interesting. So currently 2/3 of people who have answered say that they are in progress of forming a position on the use of AI, or it's not actually disclosed. And about 1/3 of the people have said that they currently don't have one. So I found that quite interesting. The other thing I want to do is to flip over to the some of the questions that we've had from the audience here. So we've got one here from Russ, who asks, since the generative AI option is opt out and not opt in, will clients who opt out receive the same quality of work that was provided before the change? Yep.
Sure. I mean, we just do it the same way we have always done it. We just we'll just use stock photos the way we always. I mean, that happens now, and
And then we've got another anonymous question here, who says, how will you show or / indicate to clients the specific human work done on AI images integrated into the covers as needed for copyright purposes, e.g. screenshots, PSD? If I'm not wrong, by default, all of your packages include the layered PSD file. Is that correct, Damon? Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering, because I remember we had this chat earlier when I was wondering, what exactly I could do with my layered PSD with my first cover. What kind of restrictions might there be on, kind of using that PSD around? Certainly for that Bob the Wizard cover, what ended up happening was either the author or the cover artist provided the entire layered PSD to the contest organizer, who made it publicly available on the internet, and that then got trolled through with Twitter and everything. I don't know whether for your layered PSDs, whether we would be running foul of any license restrictions, things like that, if that were to happen with one of your covers.
So the license restrictions are imposed by the stock photo libraries. So when you purchase the license for an image to use on the cover, you are purchasing the license to use that image on that cover, right? So those are the restrictions, right? So when you provide the layered PSD, you're not saying, you got to be careful, right? Because you're not saying, you don't want it to be easy for whoever's viewing it out that particular image, one of the images, and then use it on a different book or something totally unrelated, right? Then you'd be breaching the license terms of the stock photos. So that is why any of those book covers that have stock photos as part of them, you can't copyright them, right? Because you don't have the right to give somebody else the right to do something with those, right? Something else with the photos. So what was the question again?
So the question here was about showing or indicating to clients the specific human work done on the AI images integrated into the covers.
AI images. So, all right. So, yeah, what we do is on request, right? I don't think we did it with you. On request, we have sent the image codes to the author of the stock photos that we used for that cover, right? Yeah. So the reason for that, that's right. The reason for that is because they are limited to, I think it's a big number. It's like 100,000 printed versions of for the standard licensing of the stock photos that we use. But some authors want to get enhanced rights, right, for the they use. I remember now. That's because it's if you want to sell merchandise with the images on, you cannot do it using the standard book cover license that we use, because those are only licensed for the book cover. They're not licensed for merchandise. So in those cases, we would send the stock photo image codes to the author so that they can use those images themselves, which is much more expensive, to be used on merchandise and all of those things. Now, in the same way, we could send the original generative AI images that we use as part of the cover. Yeah. And then you can see exactly, firstly, how they were generated, as well as what the original image looked like. Because for me, the problem with the ethical issue with using generative AI images is when you are using the images to create a style of image that is not your original style, right? When you use it to copy somebody else's style, that's the problem with it, right? So we don't do that, right? So you I follow a lot of Facebook groups with mid-journey prompts and all of those kind of things. Like, hey, if you want to get this great Wes Anderson style image, type in whatever your prompt is and say it's the image you'll get. So we don't ever do that because that's a copyrighted style, and we would never do that. So we would include the prompt used as well as the original image, and then you can see exactly how that image fits into the cover, overall cover, and what was done to it. Where all information is just part of an author, with all of that information.
Oh, that would be fantastic. Fantastic.
Moving forward, we just, just haven't go around it. But that is
yeah. That is awesome. I'm just scrolling through the questions here. We've got a couple from Stephen here, which we'll just take a quick look. How will you ensure your clients aren't slammed with copyright lawsuits because their AI-generated cover is inherently plagiarized? Personally, my view on this is, as an author, I think that's a risk that you're going to take if you choose to have this in your covers right now. Certainly, I know the chat in Facebook groups such as 20 books to 50K, there are very high profile authors who are steering away from this just because they are very leery of it. And there are, I think, at least 2 court cases going on right now where the legality of the images that were scraped to use in the training sets that went into these models are being litigated, and I haven't heard any recent updates as to where those are at, but I will be watching those with interest. But just while we are on that subject of copyright, Damon, I remember reading an info sheet, I think from the Australian Copyright Centre or something like that, that it said in very rare circumstances, I think a particularly unique cover might be able to get some sort of copyright for the arrangement of the elements themselves. Just how rare are we talking, and how unique would we have to be talking for the layout, as it were, to be copyrighted?
look, those copyright are different all over the world. So, for example, can't be copyrighted unless there is very substantial human changes done to it. But I believe that's different in Australia and other parts of the world. But in terms of book covers, as I said, if your book cover is using a stock photo, then you can't copyright it because it's not your photo, right? It's not your original image. Somebody else owns the copyright to that image, and they've provided the right for you to use that image, and you then can't further copyright a cover that's made up of those ready copyright. It is. I think the only way that you would be able to copyright a book cover, it was an original commission that was commissioned for the cover and only for that cover. You did it yourself, or a photograph. If you took the photograph yourself that you used on a cover. But then again, the fonts, normal font license will not allow that cover to be copyrighted because you don't own the font.
Oh, that's right.
You just own
you need a separate license for the font.
You need a separate, very expensive license, very, very expensive license for fonts that would allow you to do that, or hand-drawn fonts that you do yourself, and that's impossible.
Another question from Steven here: if generative AI causes you to need fewer employees, will you start laying artists off? Currently, how big is the team at Damonza, and sort of are you seeing a change in workload as a result of these generative AI technologies?
So the way we are using the generative AI might be different to the way other people use it, right? So we're not using it to create a whole cover. Possible to do that, and in future that might be the way it goes. But for right now, we're just using it as a part of the cover. We're just using it as a generative AI element of the cover as a stock photo. It's still easier to use stock photos, right? They're quicker, easier to find. You type it in, you see that you look through a few pages, see one that fits what you need, and you use in the cover. Generative AI is still pretty hit and miss. So you might put in what you want, and you could get something that's not at all what you want, and you have to do that 50 times until you get something that you can maybe use a portion of it. So from our point of view, we're encouraging designers to use generative AI where necessary. Designers, it's certainly not going to cut down on the amount of designers that we have. There are 8. We've got 8 designers. That's part of the company. So it's certainly not going to cut down because we still need designers to put it all together. Those generative, and just like stock photo, just like we needed them before to do it. What the difference, the quality of design work is going to be much better because we've been limited by stock photos, right? We've been limited when somebody says they want whatever a certain kind of image on their cover, and you look at a stock photo and there are 5 of them, right? There's 5 of those images. Now those 5 images have been used on 100 other covers already. So what do you do now, right? You've got to use that image. You've got to different, which we do our best to do. But suddenly with generative AI, we have unlimited images, right? If somebody wants, I think I've used the example in the article, if somebody wants a flamingo riding a motorbike, right?
Yeah,
it's impossible to do using stock photos. Can do that now using generative AI, and we can do different versions of that. Whatever style somebody wants, and that's the benefit of it. It's everything for us, and we get better at using it. It will bring down the time it takes to create a cover.
I'm curious, what is the biggest component of time right now in creating a cover? Is it going through and sourcing the right images to use in those elements, or is it some other part of the process?
I mean, that just depends. It just depends on the project.
Yeah.
I mean, it varies, but ultimately, look, we're new, right? This is all new for us as well, and as we get better at it, it will cut down on the time. And when it cuts down on the time, it cuts down on the costs.
Yeah.
Right. So it's going to make everything cheaper and better. And that's why, we're...
One thing that you specifically did call out was character creation. And I know this was something that I was deeply interested in as a fantasy author because, us fantasy authors have very specific, requirements as to what our world and our characters look like. And with the embracing of the use of generative AI, the character creation process and the fee that was attached to that is no longer something that you are charging as part of your default service. I am curious though, for those of us who choose to opt out of it, but still want that kind of custom character creation, are you going to be running some sort of legacy process for that, or will you be handling it on a case-by-case basis? What options are there for us?
I mean, yeah, I guess it will be a case-by-case basis. So, I mean, the way it worked before was there were two ways of doing it. Either we combined, Dr. Finstein style, different stock photos to create the head of one, the torso of another one, the arms of a different one, but that's difficult to work with. Just with things like getting the right angles, obviously the camera position when that photo was taken, all different, and the lighting and the shadow of that. So that's clumsy. And then the second way is we would use 3D software, create 3D characters. But again, we're not, we're book cover designers. We're not 3D artists. So we used a software called DAZ 3D, which was a free software. But, it was also limiting on what we could do. And then, we'd create the characters and then still need to bring in stock photos to make them a bit more realistic, I guess. And the rendering time was a bit of a slow process, but that's what we did. So if we have to, we could go back to that. But again, the quality that we can get now for character creation is much higher than the quality that we would have gotten before. So, I mean, now we would use generative AI to create that baseline character, I guess, the same way we would have used 3D software. And we then still fix it up with stock photos and Photoshop and all those kind of things to get what we want. It's quicker, it's much quicker, and it's much better, right? So we could go back to the old way if we had to for somebody that really wanted that. If we had to, but look, the output. If you want to get the best product for your cover, you want for your book, get the best cover, then you should probably use the best tools.
That is a really good segue for final thoughts, because we are at an hour now, and I guess what do you want to leave us authors with? Because I know there's a lot of folks here who are, still on the fence, maybe not really sure. I think some of us, like me, have made up our mind just based on our understanding of what is out there in the research that we've done. But certainly there are still a lot of folks who are undecided as of now. And who knows, if things change, if lawsuits go one way, or if new training sets and new models pop up, we may need to revisit all of this again. So what are the sort of things that you want to leave us with?
So, I mean, I know not everybody agrees with me, right, on my position, generative AI, but my position is very specific to covers. So for some people, there's a knee-jerk reaction to reject anything AI. And I believe because they don't understand it, or they haven't used it, they're afraid. I mean, it's scary. One of the biggest objection to generative AI is the way it's trained, right? That it's fed work without permission or compensation, and the AI then uses those images to learn what things look like, and that's true. Is true. However, when an author briefs us, they effectively train us on what they want, or what examples of other covers they like. They do that without permission or compensation to those authors or designers. They're doing the same thing as the trainers of the AI. They're feeding us images to learn from, to show us what they want. So what's the difference? The number of images that the AI has learned from. I've learned from tens of thousands of book covers. I've learned how cover designs work from looking at other covers. How many of those books have I paid for, have I bought, have I, far less than 0.1%. So I believe that it's fair use, right? Using cover images to learn from. So that's what the legal argument is. Is it fair use? And I believe it is. I'm not a legal expert, but so does Amazon and Google and Microsoft, right? So I believe the same applies to generative AI. AI does not copy images. It does combine existing images to make new images, like we do with stock photos when we make covers. The AI creates new images that it's learned how to do, and is really, really good at it. And Adobe knows this, right? That's why they're offering to pay copyright claims for works made by its generative AI tool. I think it's the most powerful creative tool that's ever been, right? It changes everything, but it is still a tool. It doesn't do anything by itself. It needs us to guide it and to use our imagination to produce the amazing things that it does. If you want to use it for evil by copying other people's styles, then you can do that. But you brush up and scanners and all kinds and printers and all kinds of things before you could use them for nefarious purposes. But that doesn't mean you need to ban Photoshop and scanners, right? So I believe we should embrace it because it makes so much more possible. I generally believe it allows us to be more creative because now we can do things that we've never done before, and the implications are scary, right? It is scary because it can replace some things that we could do before. And that's not just in our industry, that's in every industry, and that's true. But I believe it's good because it frees us up, right? It allows us to do more creative things, to imagine more things in worlds that have never existed before, because that's how new it is. I believe it'll take over a lot of the mundane parts, and even writing, there are parts of writing that AIs are really taking over. Spell checks, grammar checks, that is AI. It's not generative AI, but it is a form of AI. And can you imagine going through and doing spell checks on your own without the use of spell checker in Word or Google? So it allows us to do things that we couldn't do before, allows us to do it faster. And I believe as artists and as writers, and we're professional imaginers, right? And we can imagine new ways of doing things, and I think we can lead the way in this. So obviously, I don't know where it will go, right? I think the entire publishing industry will change radically within the next few years. It's possible book covers just may not exist anymore. Maybe book marketing and packaging may look entirely different. Maybe some sort of AI will just know your reading patterns and just send books that you will enjoy, right? So you don't need to market to authors because automatically it just sends the books to all the authors that it knows will enjoy this, whatever it might be. All book covers will be animated, right? Maybe you'll click on the cover in Amazon, and instead of there being a little blurb, it'll play a book trailer. Like who knows where it is? It's scary, right? But it's exciting. So I'm embracing it, and I think.
Thank you so much, Damon, for doing this live Q&A. I know my personal nightmare scenario right now is that people, instead of, going to look for actual books that have been written or, keys pressed by a human, that they're going onto Amazon and just typing in, generate me, a high fantasy novel, with a quest for a magical object in the style of Brandon Sanderson, something like that. That currently is my personal nightmare. Because it's happening with my children's books. That's what's happening.
Right, and that's a good example of something that would be unethical. Because as soon as you say in the style of somebody else, then you're copying. You're copying, right? So I think the AI models should just not work if somebody does.
I wish it could be that simple, right? Because the scenario that you've described, where the tools are actually freeing us up to do the, I'll call it the high value add of what we do as creatives, like that would obviously be the dream scenario. I mean, things that are not my favorite things to do as an author is to write blurbs. I mean, I don't think anybody buys my book because they like how no, bad example, Deb, because obviously your blurb is one of the things that gets people to actually, look at your book. But, I would love to be in a world where I can trust that the tools have been ethically developed and that there are safeguards for their ethical use. And I would love to be in a scenario where I could, use some of those tools to free me up to do stuff like write better books. That's really where I want to be. As an author going forward. But like you said, it's changing so fast every single day. I think just in the last 2 days, the entire Amazon store has just been flooded with 100% AI gibberish, where the contents, the blurb, and the covers themselves are just horrific things. And it's actually drowning out a lot of the legitimate books out there. So it is terrifying. It is scary, but fingers crossed that with more open and engaged discussions like this, where you and I, we disagree on how we should handle this going forward, and maybe on how we've gotten to each of our positions. But I'm really glad that we've been able to have a discussion like this, so that I can hear your viewpoints and you can share with us what you guys are doing in your business and how you're approaching things, so that we can sort of work through this tumultuous time as we go forward. So thank you so much for being here. And to everybody watching, if you found this session insightful, please make sure to like and share this video. And if you haven't already, and you're thinking about maybe working with Damonza, you can go check out my video review of what it's like to work with them for your book cover design. And thanks for watching, and I will see you